Hi guys, on this video, going to be looking at Colwick and one of the driving test routes around there. Now, this is an independent driver. I've got the pupil following Sat Nav around a test route. So we're not starting at the test centre, we're starting on Mile End Road. Normally you'd come from the other side, turning right into this road here. Up ahead at the traffic lights, we're going straight ahead as well. Now you'll see as we come up to the lights, there's two lanes. We want to take the left lane to go straight or left. You can see the pupil leaning over to the right because she's following the sat nav and thinks that there's a right turn coming up. She corrects it quite well, to be fair, using the mirrors and signaling before moving position. There's nobody nearby as well, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. But ideally, what we're going to be watching for is that we're following the right directions on that sat nav. Now, my sat nav did say there's a right turn ahead. However, the road just bends round to the right here, so we don't want to be signaling. We just want to be following that road round. See how the markings lead you around this curve. Up ahead, we've then got the bridge, a bend to the left, and that restricts our view quite a bit. So I want to see a lowered speed as we come up to this, lots of mirror use as we come up to this as well. Just being aware of who's behind you as you come around that bend and what's going on beyond that view. Coming over the bridge, you'll see another bend and then the road drops. Just be mindful of speed coming down the hill, and then of course the road bends around to the right. There's typically parked cars around this bend as well, so you want to be very careful not to come around here too quickly. See the taxi coming out from the right there. So again, if we come around there too quickly, we're not going to have time to react to that. So really nice pace there from this pupil. And again, there's some really good mirror use before moving around these parked cars. So a really nice example there of how to approach that section of road. Up ahead, we have a zebra crossing, a mini roundabout, and another zebra crossing. Now, that second crossing often catches people out because they're busy dealing with the mini roundabout. So as we approach, we've got to check the right to make sure nobody's coming across and that it's safe to go. See how close that crossing on the left is and how easy someone could get caught out if they're looking to the right as they start moving. So be very, very mindful as you come through that you're looking for that crossing and anyone approaching it before you pull out onto that roundabout. Coming through the high street, again, there's another crossing. I want to see lots of mirror use, lots of observations. And as you can see, the pupil's sitting just shy of 20 miles an hour as she goes through the high street. And that's absolutely fine. Crossing the crossing, you notice the yellow box there as well. Just make sure you can clear that before you enter. No issue there because the road's nice and quiet, so people can just keep it moving. We've then got another zebra crossing and the left side's a little bit obscured. So it's really important to make sure you can see that nobody's on the left-hand side before you commit to going across that crossing. As we approach the bend here, you notice the pupil leans in just a little bit too soon and ends up getting quite close to that curb. We want to be very careful not to get too close to curbs. It creates a high risk. It can damage the tires, the steering, the tracking, the wheels, but also can cause the car to bounce out into the road or jolt uncomfortably and cost us in terms of our control over it. We're going to be turning right here. Notice the van on the right there. Now the view into this road is actually pretty good as you get close to it. So I think the pupil could have brought the car straight into the middle of the road. However, I do understand that when you can't see a clear path and there's the worry of what if someone comes the other way, you want to tuck into those gaps. On this occasion, I don't think that was necessary, however, so I'd like to see the pupil get right into the middle of that road straight away. Coming up to the end of the road, we've got a left turn, and it is very blind because of the walls on either side. Again, a little more caution would be great here. The pupil does roll over the line before she's checked her right side is clear, so I want to see you stop at that line until you've made effective checks. You got to keep in mind that effective observations is the most common reason for failing the driving test and consistently has been for the past few years. So make sure you can see effectively before you cross that line into the new road. The traffic lights were turning right. You can see the pupil lining up really well for this turn and bringing the car in nice and gently. She times it really well to cross behind that last car. Lovely clear road, so we can look up and cross nice and swiftly. Remember, a green light does mean go if safe, not go blindly. So you're responsible for checking those sides as well when you enter that junction. Up ahead, we've got a mini roundabout where we were going straight ahead, second exit. Now remember, priority belongs to the cars coming towards you who are turning across your path. So the oncoming cars turning to your left. The cars from the left should give way to you. Just keep an eye on them because sometimes, of course, people will rush, especially when it's a learner driver. Now, the pupil's leaving a good amount of room between her and the parked cars as we're passing by. We want to ideally leave a door's width, so if someone opens a car door as we're coming by, it's not going to cause us an issue. We're then taking a left turn just after this white van. Notice the one-way signs either side of it, so we know there should be no oncoming cars. Of course, we don't want to fly around taking that for granted because sometimes people do make mistakes and come the wrong way at one-way streets. So nice and slow, nice and steady, and because it's a narrow road, you can see again the pupil's carrying a really low speed down here. As we come to the end, we'll be turning right. Because it's a one-way street, we don't need to worry about incoming cars, so we can position all the way over to that right-hand curb. See how the pupil leans in towards that give way, keeping the car pointing where she wants it to go, rather than tucking into the left and creating a gap on the right where a car behind might come up and fill that gap and cause us a problem. Before pulling out, she's allowed all the cars to pass, the mobility scooter too, and that's absolutely perfect. We want to make sure the road is safe for you to join before you go. You don't want to rush out into those junctions. If you're not sure about whether you can cross safely, then it's probably best to wait. So the pupil did a really good job there of holding back until she was confident she could get out safely. As we carry on along this road, there's quite a few side roads, there's some parked cars, you can see the pupils carrying a lowered speed. We've got some speed ramps too. Wherever the speed ramps, we don't want to hit them hard, you want to bring the car down to a comfortable speed. Now my advice is typically 15 and under is going to be okay. Not all cars can cope with that, of course, so you've got to adapt to your own vehicle. One of my older vehicles, you could only hit it at about 5 without it doing any harm to your spine, so just really slow and steady over the speed ramps. And the best way of doing it, in my opinion, is let go of the power, let the car decelerate naturally and roll over it gently before accelerating again, and that avoids any jumping between the pedals, any braking harshly at the last minute, keeps things nice and smooth. This truck in front, you'll notice as we come up, the hazards start flashing, the work lights even, rather than hazard lights. Now that is a clue that this truck is going to do something unusual. So this could be he's going to swing out and reverse into a side, or he's going to slow down and enter a work site. So the pupil has backed off and given them loads of room just in case they need to do a bit of reversing. This is absolutely perfect example of how to respond to a big vehicle like that. We don't know where he's going to go, so leave plenty of room. If you're getting close up behind a vehicle like that, you're going to put yourself in a position where they can't see you. And of course, if they start reversing and you're directly behind them, that's going to be a big problem for you. So keep yourself plenty of space around big vehicles, particularly when their work lights come on like that. With this situation here in the oncoming van, we've got plenty of time to get through before the van reaches us because of the speed ramp slowing it down. If you're not sure about that space, best to hold back and let the van go first. Because he slowed down, the people have plenty of time. She was on the mirrors again, which is the key here. You've got to show good awareness when you're driving. If you're very aware of your environment, you can keep yourself safer. So mirror use is not just about going through the motions to pass your test. It's about keeping yourself safe and aware when you're driving after your test as well. We're going to be taking the next road on the right, and as always we're looking for oncoming cars to give way to, and of course checking those side roads to make sure we're safe before we turn in. Looking up into that road, we can see a nice clear path as well, so the people can make really good progress up to the give way sign where we'll be turning left. At the give way, of course, leaning the car into where you want to go gets the wheels pointing where you want the car, and that's going to help you get out nice and safely. Look both ways, look at the road coming towards you as well, and make sure you get a safe path before you emerge. The pupil does a really nice job coming down the road here, keeping the car nice and central. You can see the oncoming car coming towards us as well, so we've got to pick a space where we can allow that vehicle to pass, and the pupil does a really nice job of that. As soon as that car starts letting us go, however, off she goes. So it's a case of responding to how that car's behaved. The pupil did a great job of being defensive until she was sure that that car was going to wait for her, and then as soon as it's safe to go, on those mirrors, and away we go. There's a junction just at the top here that's quite difficult to see. Just be mindful of cars sticking the nose out as you come up to things like that, because if you come around there and they're already part way out, you don't want to be flying up there at 30 miles an hour. You want to keep that speed nice and comfortable. And that's going to give you plenty of time to react if something is coming out of that junction as you come around the bend. With narrow roads like this, you can see the pupils keeping a nice lowered speed, looking at the mirrors frequently again to ensure that we're safe. I'd have liked it to be just a little bit slower coming around here just because of the bend, because if something's coming the other way at the same speed, that could cause quite a heavy response from both of us. End of the road going left, as you can see she's leaning into the turn. She's a little bit far forward, but it's not causing any issue to the road that we're joining. If there was a cyclist, it could potentially cause a problem there, so be very, very mindful of where you're actually stopping at those junctions. Make sure you're fully behind the line until you're ready to cross it, until you're safe to cross it. And onto the main road. Keep those mirrors covered again regularly. Just know what's going on, particularly when you're coming up to vehicles like this where we can't see around it. So the pupil leans out to give the bus a little more room just in case it moves off or someone walks around the front of it. Giving that little bit of space extra is going to give you more reaction time if someone does walk around the front of that bus. So never get close up to big vehicles like that as you're passing by. If you have to get close, then you bring the speed down to compensate. Notice the warning on the left there for speed ramps, and then up ahead we've got a 20 zone. It's only a short zone because of the school, but of course you've got to bring that speed down. And going downhill, it's very easy for the car to pick up, so the pupil's keeping the speed nice and under control. She asked me the question here, what if the car creeps over the speed limit briefly? Now, if it's only brief and you correct it straight away, it's not going to be too big an issue. If you leave it and it's prolonged, or if it's a significant increase in speed, then that is going to cost you on your test. Now, it's very easy to miss the 30 sign as we come off that speed ramp there, but we're back into a 30 zone. It's only a short 20 for the school zone, as I said, so you can get your speed back up as we come down the hill. Just be mindful you don't creep over, because again, downhill, the weight of the car is going to be pushing you along as well. As we come to the traffic lights, we're going straight ahead, and you'll notice we could use the left or center lanes. Now, my advice to the pupil on this one was to use the middle lane, and that's because I know what happens on the other side of this junction. You'll see what I'm on about as we go across. Now, the pupil did get a little bit confused and tried to follow the van as she went across the junction. We corrected that nice and swiftly and got her going straight ahead. As we lean round into our road, we're keeping that right-hand lane, and you'll see the parked cars on the left. That's why I advise using the middle lane to go straight there rather than the left, because as you cross that junction, you're going to have to react to that car pretty quickly and move over into the other lane. And if it's busy in that other lane, it's going to be very difficult to do that. As we come down the hill here, we're coming up to a roundabout where we'll be turning left first exit. Now, the pupil makes a mistake in terms of her directions. She turns left first exit and then turns left again, thinking that's where she wanted to go. She's a little bit quick coming into that second road as well, pushing her into the middle of the road a little bit. So we've got to be very careful that firstly, we know exactly where we want to go. And secondly, we're not going too quickly around it. So we've got to find a spot to turn around. And this is what an examiner would do if you went the wrong way on a test. To just find a safe spot to turn around. Now, in order to do that, we're going to use one of the bays to forward bay park as well. And it's really important to keep a low speed when you move around in a car park, because you're going to have people getting in and out of cars pulling in and out of spaces, particularly one that's got very limited space like this. When it comes to reversing, make sure you're taking your time, looking over those shoulders frequently, particularly when you're reversing out alongside parked cars, because that car next to us is going to restrict your view. And when it comes to steering as well, because we've got to steer right, that front end is going to swing to the left, and we don't want to swing into that car. It's already got a good few scratches on it. We don't want to add to that. So you can see the pupil here getting the nose clear before swinging over, and she just brings it back enough to give her room to get away again. It can be a little unnecessary if you go back further than you need, so just go as far as you need to get around those parked cars before moving out again. Again, leaving the car park, take your time. There's no rush to get across that car park, and be mindful of the footpath coming across the entry as well, if there is one like this. The walls, of course, make it a little more restricted to see, and the parked cars, so you can see the pupil really taking her time as she makes her way out the car park. She's a little bit wide coming out of here, but we've got the van to get around, and we've got a clear view that nothing's coming the other way when she pulls out. So I'm quite happy with that. Turning left at the end to get back on route. And as I say, if you take the wrong turn on your driving test, don't panic about it. Just as long as you do it safely, then you shouldn't have any problems. So don't let any wrong turns get in your head. If you go the wrong way, the examiner is responsible for getting you back en route. So the bus coming the other way and the parked cars, the gap is a little bit tight, so the pupil's being quite cautious on the run up to that, which is brilliant, of course. The car coming the other way lets her through because the bus is blocking them now because it's pulled over. The pupil does a nice job taking advantage of that. Again, moving out and in between cars like this, I want to see really good mirror use, ensuring that you look at the right mirror before you move out around a vehicle and your left mirror as you're passing by before moving in. And that's going to keep you up to date on who's behind, who's potentially going to cause you a risk, and how much space you're using as well. Remember that awareness, absolutely essential on your test and to keep you safe afterwards. More speed ramps, and the pupil's taking her time over these quite nicely. A little bit slower on some than others, but that's absolutely fine as long as you're keeping the car under control. You're using your mirrors as well to show that you're aware of who's behind you and how you're affecting them, and showing an awareness of the risk that someone behind may decide to use those bumps to overtake you. And then, of course, moving back up to speed where it's safe to do so. With the car in front slowing as well, you can see the pupil's keeping a really good following space, not getting too close as we come up to the road. And this allows her plenty of time to think about what that car's doing before having to react to it. And this is absolutely brilliant. Now we're going to be turning left with that vehicle, and I want to see the pupil looking up into that new road. It helps with the steering, it helps with the planning. So looking into your new roads before you commit is really going to help you keep safe and in control. And it's going to put you on a good footing to get through your test safely. Notice the oncoming car, the pupil leaning in to give way to them. She creates enough room for them to pass without going in too far to the gap. It was a little bit late coming in, so a little awkward getting out again, but not to the point it caused any real issues. Just getting the car a little bit more straight would make that a little bit more fluent to come out of. End of the road turning right. There is a car from the left who waves my pupil out. Now, if somebody invites you out, the trick here is not to rush in response to them, but to just double check and ensure that it is safe to go before you fully commit. I've had times before where a pupil has went to go with a car inviting them out like that, and they've failed to notice that there's a bike coming around them or a car coming the other way. So you want to be very careful not to just go blindly and assume that they're telling you it's safe. Make sure you know it's safe before you cross. Remember, the most common reason for failing the driving test has consistently been effective observations at junctions for the past few years now. So make sure you're countering that by looking effectively before you pull out into a new road, before you cross oncoming traffic, before you do anything. It's all about that awareness. Now this road is a 20-mile-an-hour zone. If you noted earlier when we turned into the side road, it was 20, and when we turned out the other end of it where we were invited, there was no sign, so no change of limit. So that is a 20 zone still, and you'll see occasionally on this road little speed signs which are there to remind you. There's one on the left here just by the silver car. Now these reminders will be present wherever the speed limit is not 30 in a built-up area. If you're in a built-up area and there are no reminders, odds are it's 30 mile an hour. So anything different, you will see regular reminders as you go along. Keep an eye out for them. keep scanning for those signs and that information. And don't rely on your sat nav, because sometimes sat nav can give you a speed limit that is out of date. I've had a few pupils where they've been following the sat nav and went up to 40 when it's actually been reduced to a 30 zone, because the signs have been removed and there's no reminders. It is a 30 zone, but the sat nav still says 40. So don't rely on technology to tell you what the speed limit is. Look for those signs. Here's a 30 sign telling you that as you join the new road, it is a 30-mile-an-hour zone, and you will stop seeing those reminders as you go along. At the end, of course, again, checking both sides before you pull out. The pupil does have to wait a little while here. I think she possibly could have gone in a couple of the gaps, but it's got to be your own decision when you're the one driving. Just because I would have gone, it doesn't mean the pupil feels it's safe to go. And the pupil is the one driving, so they're the one who has to make the decision. Remember, when you're driving, you're the one in charge. You're the one who makes the decision. So don't go because you think the examiner thinks you should go, or you think your instructor should think you should go. You go when you feel it's ready, because then you'll feel more in control and you'll feel more confident about what you're doing. Up ahead, the markings are a little bit faded, and you'll see the pupil drifts out across them center lines a little bit too much here. Now, whilst it's unnecessary, the fact the markings are so faded makes it a little bit more forgivable. But on a road like this, I'd suggest using the curbs as your guide if the markings aren't very clear, and that's going to keep you tucked in and prevent you going into any filter lanes for oncoming cars or right turns where they may be poorly marked. Now, you can probably guess from the position we're in, we're going to be turning right at the traffic light. Now, this is a traffic light where you have to move in and give way to the oncoming traffic. There's no filter light for you to turn right across those oncoming cars. So if this is the situation, my advice would be don't be the third car waiting in the middle of the junction, because then it's going to be awkward for you to get out the other side. The pupil was a little bit pushy on this one, and the lights were changing as she committed to it. However, she is second in line. She is good to go, and we've got a good view as the van turns. She's keeping plenty of room on the van so it doesn't block her view too much. Now, I think going through the lights was a little bit borderline. However, the pupil's done a really good job of carrying on. So worst case, I'd say that would give her a driver fault on the test. If she'd have been further back, I'd have definitely made her stop at that, because you don't want to be rushing across that line as the lights are changing. Coming down this road, we've got quite a few parked cars, and you can see the pupils taking a lowered speed as she's going through. Lots and lots of mirror use as we go through as well is really important, keeping an eye on the space on the left as well as the space on the right as the oncoming cars pass. This is also going to keep you up to date on who's behind you, whether someone's itching to overtake, for example, a motorbike or e-bike. Being aware of those is going to help you keep safe if they do decide to overtake you. So lots and lots of mirror use just to keep yourself nice and safe. Up ahead, we got a little bit of a queue, and you can see the pupil is positioning really nicely because the parked van, she's pointing outwards towards the middle of the road, but not leaning out too wide. Now, leaning out too wide could interfere with oncoming vehicles, particularly if a big vehicle comes the other way. She's also keeping a good following space on the silver van, allowing her plenty of view around it. With the zebra crossing, have a little look around and make sure that nobody is walking up to it, ready to cross. If someone is looking to cross, then we should give them that opportunity. And then as we make our way ahead, you can see the signs for the railway crossing and the barriers and such. If you remember from the way out, there's a yellow box across this crossing, and we definitely don't want to get ourselves in a position where we may have to stop inside the crossing area like this. Now, this is one where a lot of people could easily get caught out by, but if you do end up stopping in that yellow box, it will go down as a serious fault on your test, and that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is you can't move forward and those barriers start coming down, and then you're pretty much buggered. The whole point of having that yellow box is to prevent situations like that. So give yourself enough time to stop before the yellow box, and make sure you can clear the yellow box completely before you enter it. Making your way down a high street, remember to keep your eyes moving, cover those mirrors, looking out for pedestrians, cyclists, cars pulling in and out of parking areas. As we come up to the end of this one, we're going to be going right at the mini roundabout. You'll notice the no entry sign for the straight ahead exit. If you're coming down here on your test, the examiners will not say a word. They will expect you to spot those signs and follow it round to the right. Be mindful of the crossing on the other side, of course. If there's anyone using it, we need to stop and let them cross. Now, with the bus pulling up ahead as well, we want to be looking for a gap to overtake. Lots of mirror use. Move around the bus, check that left side as you're coming by, and do not signal left to come back in because people might think you're turning left there. The pupil did pop a left signal on. We had a chat about this one, how that signal could mislead that white car to pull out if it was already at the giveaway lines. Don't signal if it's obvious what you're going to do, such as moving back onto the correct side of the road. Now, if it was a lane change on a multi-lane road, then a signal would make sense. But with this being a single lane road, there's no need for it. So I don't want to see that left signal there. As we come down the hill, we've got a bend to the left. Remember this from the way out at the start of the route. It is a bend, not a turn, although the Sat Nav often says turn left. So we want to follow the markings round with no signals because the road leads us round there. That's going to bring us back up to the loop road where we're going straight ahead at the traffic lights and then left at the end. And that would lead us back in towards the test centre. Approaching the lights, you can see the markings, of course, the left lane for straight and left, the right lane for right only. So you want to make sure you're getting in the correct position there. And if you do find yourself in the wrong lane for any reason, go with it is the best solution. Don't try and change at the last minute or as you enter the junction. Just go where the road's taking you. Going across the junction, we're then going to go left at the very end of the road. That'll bring us to the small roundabout where you turn right for the test centre. So we're going to be going a different route at that point because we're doing an independent drive. And while you're not doing a test, you're not allowed in and out the test centre car park. The advice is to keep it clear for people actually doing their test. Turning left at the end here, just make sure you're safe. Look left and right before you pull out. Make sure it's clear and safe. And then up to the roundabout where you turn right third exit for the test centre. That's going to bring this video to an end. I know it wasn't a mock test with faults being analysed in that, but hopefully you'll see some of the mistakes this pupil have made and found them useful in preparing for your own test. If you have, please like, share and subscribe and comment, and I'll keep these videos coming. Thank you again, and God bless.